Hey guys, welcome back to the Good Stuff Podcast, where we try to sell you on Marysville, Ohio, and why it's a good place to call home by talking about the good stuff going on here in the community. So, once a month, I like to sit down with a fellow housing industry coworker, I guess you'd say, in a different field to get a different perspective on what's going on here locally. Today, I have an inspector. Let you introduce yourself, sir.
I am James Hane of Hane Home Inspections. I'm the owner and sole inspector for the company. So,
very good. Well, thanks for coming to join us and giving us your brilliance.
yeah, thanks for having me on and allowing me to share my brilliance. I'm always happy to help.
Look forward to it. And you know, a lot of times I know fairly well the people I've had conversations with, so I look forward to our conversation because we don't know each other that well, and yeah, so it's always nice to get to know people and not have to fake some of this conversation that I'm learning things for the first time.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, so the first place I like to start off, who are you, what do you do, and why do you do it?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm the owner of Hane Home Inspections. I'm a certified master inspector. I've been doing it for somewhere between 7 and 8 years. I just started my own business about 2 years ago, so I'm in business all by myself. What do? I do home inspections mostly, occasionally some other stuff. I do a lot of ancillary services, so like mold tests and things like that when people are worried about mold in their houses, or sewer scopes to make sure that their waste lines aren't collapsed. Yeah.
So how about personally? What else makes up James outside of work? Or whatever you want to bring up, get people to...
Yeah, so I am a father of 3 with 1 on the way. So that, as the majority of the rest of my time, is being a father. So that's always fun. My oldest is 5, and then my youngest is due mid-July. So
you guys are patient when it comes to kids.
Yeah. They're close together.
Good for
a
you.
little closer than we had anticipated.
Yeah.
But it's good because they're best friends. So.
Yeah, well, that's the best when they get along. And somebody told me once his wife was really adamant about not having kids any farther than 2 years apart because they just are in different places if they're that far apart.
Right, yeah.
And I never really thought about that too much until it came time to be a parent and process all that. And so are you from the area, right?
Yes. Actually, I grew up about 5 minutes from your house on Harmon Patrick Road.
Really?
Yeah,
Small
I
world.
lived there for like 20 years or so. I moved away a couple of times, but I kept coming back. And then my wife and I lived in Marysville when we first got married. Then we moved out near Springfield for a couple of years. But then as soon as she was pregnant with our first, we started looking for a way to come back, come closer to family and friends and all that. So
very good.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, there you go. I don't know. I like to keep it local. So if you like local, there you go.
Yeah, here I am.
Call him.
Please do.
Very cool. So, here's one of the fun questions I like. Why do you do what you do? Why, is it, let's start with how did you get into the business?
Yeah, so I actually got a job offer from my previous employer just kind of out of nowhere. I wasn't looking to get into home inspections at all, but I had recently bought my first house, which was in Springfield and was a total disaster of a house,
Yep.
which is why we were able to afford it. It was...
Been there.
I think it was $45,000, if that gives you an idea of the condition of the house.
Mine was 25.
Oh, wow. So yours is pretty
Been
bad.
there.
So we had our own home inspection from another guy when we bought our first house, and he didn't really communicate at all, like didn't want us around while he was doing the inspection, and we kind of missed a lot of the big stuff, and we were lacking the context to really understand what was going on. So we wound up spending like $10,000 more than we had anticipated in repairs.
Oh.
So that was not fun. And then when I got the job offer to come be a home inspector and learn how to do that, I was all for it. I jumped in, and my goal was always to be the home inspector I wish that I had when I bought my first house.
Seems like the number one story for the housing industry as a whole.
Yeah. It's, it kind of was a rough experience, but it showed me the importance of communicating with your client. So that's kind of why I do things the way that I do. There are a lot of inspectors out there and a lot of really good inspectors out there, but the most important thing in my mind for home inspections is communication with the client. If I create a beautiful, super detailed report that tells you everything you need to know about the house, but you don't understand it, then you've just wasted the inspection fee, because you can't do anything with information you don't understand. So I'm always trying to make sure that it's as clear as possible for my clients, and making sure that they're always reaching out to me if they have questions. So
For marketing training for a business, I've heard for social media marketing things.
Yeah.
Content without context is just noise. So I think that would apply here. Without the context, it's just, and especially for people like me, I don't really like to read. But if I'm talking to you, I'll talk to you for 2 hours about it.
Yeah.
But read for 10 minutes, no, thank you. So I think we all learn in different ways and all that, and enjoy consuming information in different ways. So so very good.
Yeah, and it's hard, especially when you're trying to read a home inspection report, if you're not familiar with every single aspect of a home. And then you read like, oh, I'm missing a GFCI outlet. Is this the end of the world, or is it need an easy fix?
And that's a huge challenge, a line that's really hard to really nail down, that gray area of, I'm sure from your perspective, obviously liability-wise, you want to make sure you're erring on the side of not underselling something. But as the real estate agent, I'm sure you've heard the deal killer term of, and one of my first, and maybe we talked about this the last time we talked, like one of my first clients had I forget who did the inspection, not that it matters, but they came through and it was a wax ring that had failed. And so the cross base Visqueen had a little, had a water spot, and the picture justified it, I guess. Anyway, so in the phrasing led the client to feel like, ooh, that's going to be, I don't really know. That might be a $5,000 repair of the basement or the bathroom floor, because that wax ring could have leaked a lot and all that. Anyway, and I was ignorant. I didn't really know enough to really know how to handle the situation because it was early on. Anyway, finally had two contractors come in to look at it, and I got under the crawl space as well. The picture that looked like it could have been this big of a puddle that had leaked was about this big. And she was making a big deal about $5,000 for this floor. Well, once I got smart enough to know how to deal with those things, but anyway, just saying the phrasing and how you guys need to go about that is really hard. And again, without that context of repair, replace, safety, and all of those things.
Yeah.
A lot of gray area in that. I was like,
yeah, absolutely. And people don't understand the difference between, like, for the FHA, for example, if your handrail isn't rounded, it's unsafe. So, we as home inspectors, we're bound by the state of Ohio regulations and by whoever certifies us, in my case, InterNACHI. And so we have limitations to how we can phrase things on the report. But we try to balance that as home inspectors in the industry. Most of us, at least, try to kind of keep it contextualized. This is a safety issue, but also you're probably not going to fall off your stairs because it's a little more of a square than a circle.
That's a new one to me. Interesting.
Yeah.
I just had a conversation about FHA guidelines and whatnot with a client on the way here. So
fun stuff.
that's interesting to know. But yeah, going back to the context of just my client early on, if the inspector would have had more context in that, she probably would have said, oh, okay, that we need to replace the wax ring, not, oh my goodness, the floor is going to fall in, we need a new floor. So context is very valuable in understanding that level of intensity, because some inspectors just say, yeah, that needs looked at by a professional because it's a problem. And problem can read many different ways.
Right. Yes. Yep. Which is why I always encourage my clients, if they can be, to be present during the inspection, because I can explain everything to them much easier if they're face to face, and I can tell them, hey, we've got a failed wax ring, there's some leaking. Just have someone pull up the toilet and replace a wax ring, or do it yourself if you're really adventurous.
Yeah, and that probably, because I'm pretty mechanically inclined, or just my brain understands that stuff, especially when I can see it. And there are lots of people that have zero inclination that way, or it seems like zero sometimes. And so that aid of, see this, that's supposed to do this, or it's supposed to look like this, and it doesn't, it really probably helps there.
Yeah.
Awesome. So on those lines, going through the certification, so one of the things I was always surprised with, how long has it been required for for an inspector to be certified?
I'm not actually 100% certain when the state finally got everything together, because it was
Like
right.
30, 40 years ago?
No, like 3 years ago. So
Sorry, just trying to make a dramatic, like, I always
like,
assumed because you were inspecting a house, the biggest asset most people have, inspectors wouldn't be existing without a certification in 2020, whatever it was when it did pass. But that was just my joke to say, only recently did it become a requirement for you to know what you're doing.
Yeah, that was
impressive.
That was an interesting choice on the state's part to just let that be a thing. But, they finally figured out that maybe we should have some kind of requirements for home inspectors.
So I think that's a distinction for people out there, that if you've had bad experience or heard or seen or whatever, like it's either different now or it's heading in a better direction, because now there's people are being held to the fire to be held accountable to how they need to operate up front, so the back end's better also.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got certified in 2016 through there's an organization called InterNACHI that basically runs a bunch of education systems and kind of monitors that as sort of a third party long before the state of Ohio did. So I got all the education, all the certifications for everything that I needed to do through 6 months of just constant on-the-job training, plus a ton of education online, and then years of experience now. So when it did come time for the state to actually start regulating the industry, I was already prepared for all of that. So I've been licensed since before they started requiring the license. I was able to get my license in pretty substantially in advance. So
is there part of that requires apprenticeship or anything like that? Or what is I guess for my education, because I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know what the standard is now.
Since you've already done it, you did it before it was required, so you just went through it.
I will say I know that the state's requirements are less than what InterNACHI requires.
Yeah.
So, and pretty substantially less, actually. So.
Good to know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say that it's not
adequate.
Adequate. There's definitely more protection than there used to be. But as always, whenever you're hiring someone, do your research.
I was going to say, so really, don't. I guess that's my biggest point, and trying to make a joke out of it is that, especially this day and age, we think because things exist, they're safe, they're on the level. Things aren't always as good as just because, I guess maybe I'll say it this way, just because somebody is a professional doesn't mean they operate as a professional and operate in a way that's going to protect your best interest. So like you said, have your research done to make sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, real estate is a super stressful situation. Like, you're buying a new house, especially if you're selling your old house in order to get your new house. You've got so many moving parts, so much money on the line, and you can't just unfortunately, you can't just trust every licensed professional to be up to par with their just because they've got the requirements met. So, which I guess is the warning to all of you: just beware.
Beware. Yeah, and again, that's kind of the buyer beware. Do your research. That's how it's kind of legally put, is buyer beware. Do your due diligence with an inspector, with whoever it needs to be there.
Yeah.
So, okay. So now on to market numbers for our area. So do you have any idea where the market numbers are? I like to start there if I can.
No, I have no clue. That is above my pay grade. I don't deal with the market.
It's above mine too. People always talk about where's the market going, what's going on, and I think I'm not smart enough to understand it. And I can understand like this part of it, but combining all of it's too much.
Yeah.
So the big thing I've been saying lately is, so this is Friday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. And as of Wednesday, or it was yesterday, there were 6 active listings on the market. So in the Marysville School District. So things are pretty low right now. That's probably a historic low. I don't think I've ever seen it that low, actually.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And that's kind of a micro look at things. And it seems like in the last week, a couple have fallen off. And so that's brought the average asking price currently to like $635, $640, I think it was yesterday. So it crept from like 4 something to when a couple of the less expensive ones closed, then it jumped up. So anyway,
yeah.
So this is the portion where I get your opinion on where things are at. So I'll run through real quick. March numbers. We had 35 new listings in the market of March. Because April's numbers aren't out yet. That's why we're still a month backward. A few days early for the market update. But anyway, 26 active listings on average, 31 pending, 20 sold. So year over year, we were up 45% on active listings. So things are sticking around longer, as kind of you were indicating before this. Sold's down 49% year over year. Quite significant. Wow. So March's average sales price, what people were asking for their house was $410. Average closed price was $360. Sales price was 1%, the listed price versus what it actually closed for was 1% under, so a little less competitive than it is currently. $181 a square foot. Days on market was 20. And absorption rate, how many months of inventory? 1.3 months, if you will. So, slow numbers. So, before this, he was telling me that you're a little busier thanks to the slowdown. Why is that?
Yeah, so one very poor decision that was being made, especially starting in a certain few months in 2020, is things got crazy, just crazy. Don't need a qualification. It was insane. And people started trying to do whatever they could to get into a house, which is fair. I mean, I get it. But one of the things that they were doing was they were waiving inspections, because that was a way to make your offer more appealing, because you're saying, hey, I don't care what I'm getting into. It's like there will be nothing that will stop me from buying this house. The problem with that is, you have no idea what you're getting into. Most people just are not aware of the intricacies of their home systems. Even something as simple as downspouts. Like, that's the thing that I always love to use as an example, because it's, you can fix a disconnected downspout for $5 or $10. Or you can not realize that it's disconnected, and in 5 years you can fix your foundation. So, it's...
And more common than people realize.
Exactly, yeah, especially on new construction, because in that first couple of years, your downspouts are dropping.
Why don't they fix that? I don't understand. That's such a common problem. I don't understand why they don't address that.
Well, you have the issue of the soil just isn't completely packed. So
make a longer tube.
What's that?
The tube that the downspout goes into, make the tube longer.
Well...
I'm saying there's easy solutions to it. It's just amazing that it happens all the time.
Yeah, it's. I've seen people trying to fix it in some different ways, but we'll see whether these builders are actually getting it right or not. I don't know. But because things are starting to slow down now in the real estate business, buyers are much more free to get home inspections without having to worry about, I'm going to lose my deal just because I want to know what I'm getting into. So that has been that's been a great thing for home inspectors. Obviously, I like it when I have more business. More business is good for me. It's good for my kids. But it's also really, really important.
And you serve a value, like a purpose. Like, it's not just you making money, but it actually helps people. Yeah.
Yep. Because I find safety issues that a lot of times are super easy to fix. But if you don't know about them, there can be a problem. I find old smoke alarms and stuff like that are not reliable anymore. Like, that's just one of the most just straightforward, easy things to see. You walk in, you see the smoke alarm is yellow. Probably it's not from this century, actually. So it's time to replace it.
Yeah, time to update.
Yeah, exactly.
One of my not really favorite. It's always a weird word when I have this feeling, but heard one time from an inspector, the little feet on the back of an oven.
Oh, yeah.
Or not feet, but the clip that holds the feet.
Yeah, the anti-tip bracket.
Yeah, in case a toddler gets on the oven or dishwasher, I guess, but I think it's more prevalent with an oven, and it doesn't fold up on them.
Yeah.
It's just a little simple clip that your feet slides back into, but significant avoidance of a problem down the road. So.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that home inspectors do kind of get teased about, like, you're worried about the anti-tip bracket. Well, no, but if you have toddlers, like you said, or drunk friends or whatever that are climbing on your oven, that could end poorly.
Yes.
It comes with the oven, so just
I was
screw
going
it
to
on
say,
the wall,
yeah.
slide it in place. It's not that hard.
And just like dressers and all that,
Yeah.
So anyway, generally in your feeling, where's the market at? What kind of conversations are you having with buyers that you weren't last year? Or maybe do you interact with sellers at all? You probably, unless they're leaving.
I do some pre-listing inspections to make things easier for people, which I think that now, as things are starting to slow down, is going to be even more valuable for a lot of sellers.
Do you see that more in houses that don't need it or houses that need it?
Well, all homes need inspections. I'll say
No,
that.
pre-inspection.
Yeah.
I guess an inspection. Sorry, you were right.
Yeah. That's kind of hard to say because it varies. I've seen houses where I've done pre-listings where there's a bunch of issues that really need to be addressed before they can sell it if they want to get it for top price, because the buyer more than likely is going to have their own inspector come in and they're going to find the same things that I
And it shows well if you've done the due diligence to do that on the front side. It's less likely a buyer is going to feel like you're pulling the wool over their eyes.
Exactly.
Or unless they think you're just completely outright lying.
Right. Right. Yeah. One thing that I think for really well-intentioned investors who do flips, a pre-listing inspection is super helpful because then you can say,
what got missed?
We didn't just rush this; it's done right, and here's the proof.
Yeah. Sometimes when I go through a listing with a prospective seller or a seller, either they know they haven't done much, or they're obsessed with making sure their house is perfect, and they've done that for the last 20 years, so their house is already perfect. So I think some people understand they need it, but I was just curious if there was any generalization that most of the time I've heard people say, if you're asking the question, you're already paying attention to what you need to. You probably don't need to worry about it. But there's probably equally those people that know they haven't taken care of their house, so they have you come in.
Right, yeah. So I've kind of had it both ways, where I've had people who they just know something needs to be done, but they don't know what it is. And so that's helpful. But then you also have the people who haven't taken care of their house, and when they get that pre-listing inspection, they can list saying, we know there's nothing wrong, and here's the report if you want it. And all of that evidence is just right there for the buyers. So the buyers can offer kind of in good faith more than
and that is
you're
a
not
big thing.
You're not planning on maybe there's a foundation issue, so maybe I don't want to offer what the house is actually worth.
That's a good selling point on having a pre-listing inspection, because there's a lot of times buyers will come through and make an offer gut reaction more so, and then they get the inspection report. That furnace is 20 years old. Well, honey, you knew it was 20 years old. Like you said, the color indicated
right.
It's had some age to it.
Yeah.
And so I think
the furnace is still green. It's pretty old.
Yeah, there aren't many of those that are
new. That's very 80s style.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. So yeah, just that, and that's a lot of. Sometimes I think this whole business, a lot of times, comes down to having a relationship with somebody who knows what you don't, or what you're insecure about, or like you said earlier, having a before we started recording, that having a second set of eyes to back up what you're doing, since it is such a big thing.
Yeah. But to answer your question about am I having kind of different conversations with buyers now than I was
Thank you.
A year or two ago, I'd say probably the biggest thing that I'm noticing is that it's more common for people to still have that freedom now to go back and do negotiations when something is uncovered that nobody knew about,
the request
or that was being hidden. Not that most sellers are not acting in bad faith, but every now and then we run across something that as home inspectors in the industry, you can ask any home inspector, there's always something that one of us can point to and say, hey, this was a moment where clearly this was being hidden, but as an inspector, it's my job to try to find those things. So I just had a client 2 weeks ago, was able to get $15,000 off the house plus a bunch of work done because the home inspection that I performed revealed a host of issues that they just didn't know about. Because my client was, she was a little bit of an older lady buying a house by herself, just wasn't familiar with a lot of the systems. So after she got the report, she had all the information she needed to decide whether or not it was a good investment, and was able to get a bunch of money off the purchase. So, which could have been avoided possibly by the seller if they'd done a pre-listing inspection with me, with Hane Home Inspections. That's right.
No name drops here.
No.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, and that's one thing I've always had on the back of my mind of doing pre-listing, but it's people aren't always interested in that, but I think it's a valuable thing and something I've thought I should focus on more. Awesome. So you got a prediction for the market where we're going? Housing wise?
As a home inspector, one of the things I say all the time is I can't see the future. But I will say I think that the housing market is still going to be pretty solid in the Marysville area for a long, long time. There's a lot of talk I hear constantly, people worrying about the housing market crashing or dropping or whatever after the massive inflations that we had in 2020, 2021. But a lot of the conversations aren't taking into account the natural pressures in central Ohio. So there are certainly areas in the country where you're going to have serious housing issues where there's devaluation. Yep. But here in central Ohio, we have so many pressures. Columbus is a major city that people want to be near. There's a lot of jobs coming in, new construction. I think the houses are still going to sell. Value is still going to keep going up here in Marysville in particular. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it.
I agree. So I just before this came from a financial advisor, and had some experts in to talk about things. And I kind of tried. A lot of people when they say the housing market's going to take a dive, and 08's going to happen again. Well, the same thing's not going to happen again. Who knows? Something else might happen. That's what they were saying in 06 and 07, that things are great, but really they weren't paying attention to what wasn't. So we don't know what we don't know until we know it, So who knows? Maybe there's something out there that's going to happen. But for the most part, around here, we're solid. But the financial conversation, he was saying in 90, I forget exactly what the divergence was. Credit cards and things. That from 92 to like 06, 07, cash that we as citizens in America had went down or stayed the same, and credit and our liabilities went up until that point. And I guess now we're back to those 92 levels. So it's a balancing act of, in general, we're balanced out on credit versus the cash or the debt versus the cash that we have. So
Gotcha.
I thought that was an interesting.
Yeah. I have clients all the time from places all over the country and the world, actually, that are coming to Columbus. And, as someone who grew up in Marysville, there's always part of me that's like, oh, why would you want to move to Columbus? But, people love the city. There's a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah, like you said earlier, you came back. I experienced that a lot. A lot of my brother-in-law was one. He said, I went to California, went all over the place, and came back. And, I think you don't know what you don't know, or you don't know what you have until you get some other experience. And it's
right. And one of my favorite stories was a client from California. We were talking. We had finished the inspection, and she asked me. She was really happy with the house, but she said, "Okay, but what do you do when there's an earthquake?" I don't know. We don't have earthquakes. And she was like blown away by that. She's like, "Oh, I totally forgot that." And then she asked me, "So what do you do when there's a wildfire?" Well, we don't have wildfires either. And she listed several disasters that are like common in a lot of areas. And I'm like, yeah, nope. Worst is every now and then there's a tornado. Don't
live in California.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's a lot of things to commend Central Ohio.
I was gonna say I have a client right now that, like, what's that? That's a sump pump. He's from Florida. They don't have basements. Yeah. So just those little things that don't really go. Okay. So one of my big goals as an agent and a local professional, I guess, is to be a resource to the community. So through that, what are the top 3 things you can tell the audience in case they're getting an inspection, or I guess it doesn't even need to be associated with a real estate transaction. I'm sure you just go into anybody's house and tell them what's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if they are in a transaction, let's focus on that.
Right. Yeah. Well, the first thing and the biggest thing, the most important thing that I can say is if you have a question or if you don't understand something, don't ask Google, ask your inspector. Because your inspector knows the context, your inspector knows everything about the house. By the time your inspector is done, ask your inspector if you have any questions.
If your inspector knows what they're doing.
Right. Well, I'm going to assume
Context.
that your inspector
they're
is
calling you?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Ask your local James Hane Home Inspector. But seriously though, anytime a client has any kinds of questions, anything that they don't understand, if they're trying to figure out on their own, there's a good chance they're going to get a lot of different answers, and there's going to be some misinformation just because if you're Googling, hey, I have this problem with my house, what's wrong? You're going to get a lot of forums where people are talking about other problems that might not be related.
Yep.
Just call your inspector or text or email or whatever, because your inspector knows.
That's one of the things I try to say all the time. Have a relationship and just engage.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. And I will say, I can't speak for every inspector, but for me, I always appreciate it when my clients reach out, because then I know that they're not sitting there fretting and worrying. I know that I can answer the questions. You paid to get information. You didn't pay to get a beautiful PDF. You paid to get some information that you can use.
And if you're like me, the beautiful PDF doesn't go very far because it just bores me to read.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But
no, they are boring.
Well, and I think the other thing too, not a lot of people, sometimes people are aware of this, but sometimes people get the inspection report. What's the shortest inspection report, full report you've ever done?
I think I've done some pre-drywall inspections that are maybe 4 pages.
Okay, so that's like half a house.
That's
Right.
like if most of your house is not there.
Yeah. But in general, just when people,
I'd say the average
pages.
report is about 20 pages at least. Yeah.
And some inspectors, you'll get the like 3 or 4 pages of introduction and 5 pages of summary with disclaimer. So sometimes they can get a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes people just aren't expecting to get that much, and then they think, "Oh my goodness!" And so I think that's a good context too, also to know that you're going to get lots of stuff. Okay, so ask questions and engage. Number 1.
Yeah. Yep. Number 2 is just listen to the recommendations. It doesn't help if you listen, if you get all that information and then you don't do anything about it. A big example that I always point to is disconnected downspouts. Super easy to replace, but if you don't do it, you're going to get major problems. And I see that with a lot of issues with houses, where I'll find an issue, it's relatively small. If you take care of it right away, then you don't have a big issue later on.
I heard recently somebody say 2 minutes a day is better than 2 hours on Saturday, and I've always taken that to be little bit of education on how to talk.
You don't say.
Preventative maintenance is huge, and that's one thing I'm trying to do better at, is using that as a communication tool with my clients to say, hey, remember, change your air filter or do all those little things that aren't too bad, but if you delay them, they can become serious problems.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep. And then I guess the last thing is just kind of tying it together is save your inspection report and use it as a checklist, because a lot of inspectors, I can't speak to everybody, but I know for me, when I'm putting together a report, I'm including recommendations for those regular maintenance, like check your filter and stuff like that. That's all in the report. So you can just go through, once a year for the first couple of years that you own the house and just double check, did you take care of all of these issues? Is there anything that you can do in 5 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour to improve the quality of your home and prevent future damage? You've got that checklist right there. And then if you have a question a year after the report was done, we inspectors are required to keep those reports for, I think it's a minimum of 5 years, but I keep mine indefinitely. So you can always ask again.
And just I'm trying to get better at this about house stuff. Everybody's got some sort of device that you can take 20 minutes, schedule them out for the next 5 years, and be reminded.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Your device. Yeah. So there are ways to do it electronically and have those reminders. Awesome. And the other thing I want to add on to that, no house is perfect.
Correct.
So you don't have to fix everything. Most of them aren't things that are going to turn into stuff, but there are a lot of things that will turn into something. And being able to give yourself some grace, and as long as you do enough that it doesn't get too bad, you're good.
Right. Yep.
Don't have to make it all perfect. And houses are, just like they say with cars, if you don't use them, they start falling apart, and they're meant to be used, and a little bit of maintenance goes with all that. And
yeah. Yep.
And I think it goes with just being educated on what things are, and so you have more of an understanding. If you've done some of the maintenance and kind of dig into things a little bit, you understand when there might be a problem, why there's a problem, or how things are supposed to function and operate, and you got a little better idea when things come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Well, anything else you think is worth communicating to the good folks out there?
I don't think so. I mean, that's a good introduction to home inspections. I guess the only other piece of advice would be when you're thinking about prioritizing, like you were just talking about, always prioritize. If there's a fire hazard, obviously fix that. But then the other big thing would just be if there's anything about uncontrolled water, whether it's water sitting against the house or a potential leak or corrosion in pipes, fix that. And most of the rest of the stuff, if your handrails are too short, you're probably going to be okay. If you've got a small area of corrosion on a pipe, I'd prioritize that to make sure that you don't wind up with
bust while you're on vacation.
Yeah, a lot more expensive fix. So.
Wonderful. Okay, so when people need a good inspector, what do they do?
I would say call me, obviously.
Sorry, that was my segue into how do you get a hold of James?
Yeah. So
take the opportunity. Go.
Yep. Reach out to me anytime. It's Hane Home Inspections. My name is James. You can call, text, or email anytime. Our phone number is 380. Oh, wow. I should know my own phone number, shouldn't I? 380-327-8213, I think.
I'll have it on the screen.
Yeah. Put that in you can edit that if you need to.
Yeah,
Splice the numbers around.
There we go.
Or email me at james@hanehomeinspections.com. It's HANE, like the underwear without the S. So there you go. Easy to remember.
I like it. Good memory too, or thing to trigger their memory. Yep. A visual if you want.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a marketing campaign for you.
Yeah, I don't think we should make that too much of a visual.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Well, thanks for the conversation. Thanks for helping be a resource, and hoping people can have a better transaction and inspection process when they get to that point. Hopefully they give you a call. So reach out to James. Good job. He just did one for me yesterday, so I highly recommend. Obviously, I wouldn't have you here if I didn't. And like, follow, subscribe, do all the things to stay in touch if you liked what you listened to. And if you made it this far into the conversation, however long it's been, I applaud you and appreciate you. And if you want to sit next to me and talk about real estate or the community or housing or whatever, love to have you. Or if you know somebody that would, them as well. So until next time, take care.